The night was quiet on Jacob Miller's farm. The only sounds were the low hum of crickets and the soft rustle of corn stalks swaying in the breeze. Jacob had finished his work hours ago, eaten his supper alone at the kitchen table, and now sat on the porch with a lantern beside him. It was an ordinary night, plain and peaceful, just like most nights in his simple life. Then the sky tore open. At first it looked like a falling star, a streak of silver fire ripping across the dark heavens. Jacob leaned forward, squinting. But this star did not fade. It grew brighter, closer, and the sound of air splitting apart rushed toward him like thunder. The ground shook. A crash followed, loud, violent, and too near. His lantern rattled on the wooden porch rail. The horses in the stable cried out in panic. Jacob jumped to his feet. His farm stretched wide under the moonlight, acres of wheat and corn. Somewhere out there, beyond the old fence line, something had hit the ground hard. He grabbed his shotgun, not because he thought it would help much, but because it was habit, and hurried across the fields. Smoke curled above the far edge of the corn rows. He pushed through the stalks, his boots thumping on the soil. His heart pounded. Part of him thought it might be a meteor. Another part whispered danger. Strange thoughts entered his mind. Government plane, secret weapon, something not meant for human eyes. When he reached the crash site, his breath caught. A wide circle of crushed corn lay before him, dirt torn open as if a giant had slammed into the earth. Sparks flickered from a metallic object half buried in the ground, glowing faintly blue. It was no plane Jacob had ever seen. The shape was twisted, sharp, almost alive. And then he heard it, the groan. Something moved. At first Jacob thought it was an animal. He saw wings folding and shifting, scales glinting in the dim light. A huge form struggled to rise, then collapsed again with a heavy thud. Jacob stepped back, shotgun raised, sweat breaking across his forehead. The creature lifted its head. It was not a beast. It was not a man. It was both. Its body was like a dragon from old legends, long wings, powerful tail, skin covered in dark scales that shimmered like armor. Yet across its chest clung broken metal plating, strange armor shaped to fit its form. One arm was bent awkwardly, bleeding with thick black blood that smoked when it touched the soil. Its eyes glowed faint gold, burning with pain but also intelligence. Jacob froze. His breath came in short gasps. Every instinct told him to run. This thing was huge, dangerous, a nightmare drag out of storybooks. But then it spoke. A rasping voice, low and broken. "Help me." The shotgun nearly slipped from Jacob's hands. The creature's mouth moved, forming words, strange yet understandable. It spoke English, or something close to it. Jacob could not believe it. He whispered back before he could stop himself. "You can talk." The dragon soldier coughed, shuddering. Its wings twitched weakly. "Wounded, chase need, safe." Jacob stared down at the smoking black blood pooling in the dirt. His farm boy heart argued with his frightened mind. This thing was no ordinary animal. It was something out of the stars, maybe out of war. He thought of calling the sheriff, calling anyone, but he also knew, if he did, the creature might not live long enough to see morning. Its head dropped, eyes flickering like dying lanterns. "Please." Jacob's hands shook. He lowered the shotgun slowly. The creature was enormous, strong enough to crush him if it wanted. But right now it was broken, helpless. And against every bit of reason, Jacob felt pity. He made his choice. "All right," he muttered. "But if you try anything, I swear—" He didn't finish the sentence. Words seemed too small for this moment. Jacob slid the shotgun over his shoulder and stepped closer. The dragon soldier's breathing was ragged. Its scales were torn, armor cracked. Somehow, with all his strength, Jacob got one of its heavy arms over his shoulder. The weight nearly drove him to his knees, but he gritted his teeth and dragged. Step by step, through the corn, across the dirt path, toward the barn. His back screamed, his lungs burned, but he didn't stop. Behind him, the strange ship smoldered in the field, sparks flickering like dying fireflies. Finally, they reached the barn. Jacob shoved the doors open, pulling the creature inside. The smell of hay and animals filled the air. He lowered it onto the straw, chest heaving. The alien dragon soldier let out a long, rattling breath. Its eyes glowed faintly as it looked at Jacob. You chose help. Jacob wiped the sweat from his forehead. He swallowed hard, staring at the impossible sight before him. His voice was rough when he answered, "Don't make me regret it." The barn went silent, save for the slow, heavy breathing of the wound. The night grew colder, and the barn smelled of hay, earth, and animal musk. Jacob stood by the door, his hands still trembling after dragging the alien dragon soldier inside. His shotgun leaned against the wall, but he hadn't touched it again. The creature lay on the straw, wings folded tight, chest rising and falling in painful rhythm. Jacob lit a lantern and hung it on a nail. The warm glow revealed more of the alien's body. Its scales were dark but not uniform. Some shimmer with faint silver, others dull and broken. Metal armor pieces clung to its frame, bent and cracked from the crash. A wound cut deep across its shoulder and side, leaking black blood that steamed when it touched the straw. The smell was sharp, like burned oil. Jacob felt fear crawl along his skin, but another feeling pressed harder: responsibility. He had brought it here. Now what? The creature stirred, eyes flickering open. Golden light met Jacob's gaze. Its voice was low, rough, but clearer now than before. "You safe here?" it asked, the words heavy with effort. Jacob hesitated. "Safe enough, if nobody sees you. But you're bleeding bad. You need help." The alien's lips, if they could be called lips, pulled back slightly, not quite a smile, but something close. "Help from farmer?" Jacob frowned. "I may not be a doctor, but I've patched up plenty of livestock. A cut's a cut. Blood's blood." He paused, rubbing the back of his neck. "Just hope your kind isn't too different." He went to his workbench at the far side of the barn. His hands moved on their own, gathering supplies: clean rags, a bucket of water, and an old bottle of whiskey for disinfecting. He had once used it on a horse with a nasty gash. The horse survived. Maybe this alien would too. When Jacob returned, the dragon soldier watched him closely, golden eyes sharp despite its weakness. Jacob knelt and pressed a rag to the wound. The alien hissed, wings twitching violently. Jacob almost dropped the cloth. "Hold still," he muttered. "You want to live or not?" Slowly, the alien forced itself to calm. Jacob cleaned the wound, poured whiskey over it, and tied the rag tight. The black blood oozed, but less than before. The alien's breathing steadied. It whispered, "You strange." Jacob raised a brow. "Strange? That's rich coming from you." "No fear," the alien rasped. "Or a little fear. Most would run." Jacob looked away, his jaw tight. "Maybe I should have. Maybe I still should. But something tells me if I leave you here, you won't last the night." Silence stretched between them. The barn creaked in the wind. An owl hooted outside. Finally, the alien spoke again. "Name, Riker." Jacob blinked. "Rykar?" The alien nodded weakly. "Soldier, warrior of Drakari Legion." Jacob didn't know what that meant, but it sounded like military. He had guessed right. This was no traveler or explorer. It was a fighter from somewhere far beyond Earth. "I'm Jacob Miller," he said after a moment. "Farmer. Wheat, corn, couple cows, and chickens. Nothing special." Riker's golden eyes glowed faintly. "Special enough to choose mercy." Jacob stood and paced a few steps, running a hand through his hair. His mind spun. What if the government found out? What if this thing brought trouble to his land? Already, lights might have been seen when it crashed. He could have neighbors asking questions by morning. But when he looked back at the creature, this Riker, lying weak on the straw, something inside him hardened. He remembered his father's words, long ago. "Son, a man's worth is measured by how he treats the helpless, not the powerful." Riker was powerful, no doubt, but tonight, he was helpless. Jacob sat again, sighing. "All right, Riker, you stay here until you can stand on your own, but you can't be seen. Not by anyone." The alien gave a slow nod. "Understand. Hidden." Jacob leaned back against the wall, exhaustion pulling at him. He wanted sleep, but his mind refused. Too many questions burned. Finally, he asked, "Who are you fighting?" Riker's gaze turned sharp, even through pain. War across stars. My legion betrayed. Enemies follow. His voice dropped lower. They hunt me. Jacob's stomach tightened. So, someone might come looking for you? Yes, Riker said simply. Jacob cursed under his breath. This was worse than he thought. If alien soldiers landed here searching for their wounded, what chance would he have to stop them? His farm was nothing but wood, soil, and simple tools. Still, he had already made his choice. He would see it through. The lantern's light flickered, shadows stretching across the barn. Jacob finally stood, brushing straw off his pants. Get some rest. I'll check on you at dawn. Don't go scaring my animals. Riker's eyes closed slowly. His chest rose and fell, steady now. Thank you, Jacob Miller. Jacob left the barn, closing the door behind him. He walked back to his house under the pale moonlight, the night eerily quiet again. But it didn't feel like the same night anymore. It felt like the start of something much bigger. Inside his kitchen, Jacob poured himself a glass of water, hands still shaking. He stared at the dark fields outside his window. Somewhere out there, a broken ship still smoldered in the dirt, and inside his barn lay a wounded alien soldier. He whispered to himself, almost in disbelief, "What have I done?" The clock on the wall ticked past midnight. Tomorrow would come fast. And with it, maybe questions, maybe danger. Jacob didn't know. But he did know one thing. He had chosen to help. And choices had consequences. The farmer sat at his table, staring into the dark, waiting for the first light of dawn. Morning broke over Jacob Miller's farm. Golden sunlight spread across the fields, chasing away the last shadows of night. Birds sang from the fence posts, and dew glittered on the corn leaves. To anyone passing by, it looked like an ordinary day, but Jacob knew better. Inside his barn lay a secret that could change everything. He walked out with a bucket in one hand, pretending to go about his chores. His cows mooed, waiting for feed. The horses stamped their hooves, wanting fresh water. Jacob did the work automatically, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept glancing toward the barn, his chest tight with worry. Finally, when his chores were done, Jacob carried the empty bucket back. He set it down by the barn door, then pushed it open. The smell of hay and earth greeted him, but also something sharper, the faint scent of smoke like metal burned in a forge. Riker was still lying on the straw, his body curled, wings folded close. But his golden eyes opened as Jacob stepped in. "You live," Jacob said softly. "Live," Riker echoed, his voice still rough but stronger than last night. He shifted slowly, wincing. The wound across his side was bound with Jacob's cloth, dark stains spreading across it. Jacob crouched beside him. "How bad is it?" "Pain heavy," Riker admitted, "but strength returns." His eyes narrowed. "You stayed. Did not run." Jacob gave a small shrug. "Wouldn't feel right, leaving you like that." The alien soldier studied him for a long moment. "Strange human," he murmured again. Jacob sat back on an old wooden crate. He rubbed his hands together, uneasy. His questions had been burning all night, and now he needed answers. "Tell me something, Riker. Where do you come from?" Riker's wings rustled softly as he breathed. His voice lowered, almost like he was telling a secret. "I am Drakari, warrior born. My kind fight across stars for honor, for empire." "Empire?" Jacob repeated. "Yes, Drakari Legion," Riker said, eyes glowing faintly. "We are soldiers, bound by oath. To fight is life, to fall in battle is glory." He paused, his voice darkening. "But not all wars are just." Jacob leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Riker's claws flexed against the straw. His face twisted, half anger, half pain. "We were sent to fight, not for honor, not for defense. For conquest. Worlds burned, families lost." He closed his eyes. "I believed too long." Jacob's stomach knotted. He thought of his own family, his parents, now gone. They had taught him that war left nothing but broken men and graves. "So you left?" Jacob asked quietly. Riker opened his eyes again. "Betrayed commander. Refused to burn village. They turned on me. Hunted me. Ship struck. I fell here. He looked around the barn at the wooden beams and dusty corners. Far from stars. Far from war. Jacob tried to imagine it. Armies of dragon soldiers clashing in the blackness of space. World set on fire. It was almost too big to understand. But one thing was clear. This creature had chosen not to kill. And now he was paying the price. Sounds like you did the right thing, Jacob said. Riker tilted his head. Right thing. Not killing the village. Walking away, Jacob explained. That takes guts. Riker gave a slow, rumbling sound. Maybe a laugh. Maybe something else. Among Drakari, mercy is weakness. To you it is courage. Jacob looked him straight in the eye. Yeah, around here, we don't measure a man by how many he kills. We measure him by how many he saves. For a long moment, they sat in silence. The farmer and the alien soldier, two lives from different worlds, sharing the same barn. Finally, Riker spoke again. Why help me, Jacob Miller? Risk your home, your life? Jacob thought about it. He didn't have a clear answer. Maybe it was his father's voice in his memory. Maybe it was simple stubbornness. Maybe it was just the human thing to do. He shrugged. Because you needed help, and I was the only one here. Riker studied him closely. Then he bowed his head, a gesture that seemed heavy with meaning. Then you have my oath. Drakari do not forget dead of life. You saved me. I owe you. Jacob shifted uneasily. I don't need an oath. Just don't bring trouble down on my farm. The alien's eyes darkened. Trouble will come. Jacob frowned. You mean your enemies? Riker nodded slowly. They will track. They will follow trail of fire. If they find me here, they will not spare you. The farmer's blood ran cold. He had hoped maybe the crash would be ignored. Maybe no one else would notice. But if other aliens were truly out there, searching, then this was far from over. Jacob stood, pacing the barn floor. His boots crunched straw underfoot. So what do I do? Hide you forever? I can't fight space soldiers. I've got a shotgun and a plow. That's it. You hide me, Riker said simply. Until I heal. Until I fight again. His eyes glowed with fierce determination. Then I protect you. Jacob stopped pacing. He looked at the alien soldier, battered but unbroken. Strength burning beneath the wounds. A strange thought struck him. This was no wild beast, no monster. This was a warrior, a living person with honor and shame, with choices that carried weight. All right, Jacob said at last. You stay hidden. I'll cover for you if anyone asks. But the second you're strong enough, you're out of here. Understand? Riker inclined his head. Understand. Agreed. The farmer sighed and rubbed his temples. Already, the weight of this secret pressed on his shoulders. But there was no turning back now. He grabbed a bucket of water and slid it near Riker. Drink. You'll need strength. The alien leaned forward, claws curling around the bucket carefully. He drank deeply, golden eyes watching Jacob the whole time. When he finished, he set it down and gave a slow nod. Jacob turned toward the door. I've got work in the fields. You rest. And for the love of God, don't roar or something while I'm gone. Neighbors will think I'm raising dragons. Riker gave that strange, rumbling laugh again. Dragon, yes, that is what you see. Jacob half smiled despite himself. Yeah, a dragon in my barn. Never thought I'd say that. He stepped out into the sunlight, the door closing behind him. The farm stretched wide and open before him, the same as always. But Jacob knew life would never be the same again. Inside the barn, Riker lay back on the straw, eyes glowing softly. The human had shown him mercy, and in return, he would keep his oath. But above them both, beyond the clear blue sky, ships already searched the stars. And sooner or later, they would find him. Eyes passed on Jacob Miller's farm, but they did not feel normal anymore. He went through the motions, feeding cows, mending fences, watering crops, but his mind never rested. Every chore ended with his eyes drifting back toward the barn. Inside lay Riker, the alien dragon soldier, slowly healing. Jacob brought food and water when he could, usually at night when no one was around. Riker ate little, mostly meat Jacob managed to cook, or sometimes raw, which unsettled him. The alien's wounds closed slowly, the black blood scabbing like burned tar. His strength returned inch by inch, though he still moved stiffly. The two of them spoke more now. Their words were simple, sometimes broken, but each night Jacob learned something new about the Drakari, about battles among the stars, about worlds far from Earth. Jacob listened, half amazed, half terrified. He was only a farmer, and yet he was hearing things no other human had likely ever heard. But outside the barn, danger grew. On the third night after the crash, Jacob stood on his porch, looking up at the sky. The stars glittered cold and clear. Then he saw it. 3 faint lights moving in formation, too steady and slow to be meteors, too silent to be airplanes. They passed overhead, then vanished into the horizon. Jacob's heart sank. He knew what they were. Riker's enemies. Searching. The next morning, Jacob tried to act normal. He drove his old tractor across the fields, pretending nothing was wrong. But trouble came sooner than he feared. As he parked by the barn, he saw his neighbor, Tom Willis, walking up the dirt path. Tom was a tall man, nose sharp like a hawk's beak, always curious about things that weren't his business. He tipped his hat with a smile that never reached his eyes. "Mornin', Jacob," Tom said. "Heard a mighty loud crash other night. My wife swore it shook the windows. You see anything?" Jacob forced a laugh, wiping grease off his hands. "Yeah, I heard it too. Figure it was a storm blowing through, maybe a small meteor." Tom's eyes narrowed. "Funny, some of the boys say they saw lights in the sky. Not like no meteor they've ever seen." He glanced at the barn. "You been keeping anything in there?" Jacob felt sweat prick his neck. He kept his face calm, though his chest hammered. "Same as always, tools, hay, and a couple chickens too stubborn to go in the coop. You want to check my chickens, Tom?" Tom chuckled, but it was dry. "No need. Just thought I'd ask. Strange times, Jacob. Best to keep your eyes open." With that, he tipped his hat again and walked back toward the road. Jacob watched him go, jaw tight. Neighbors were talking. If they grew too curious, they might come snooping. And if they snooped, they'd find more than chickens. That night, Jacob went into the barn, shutting the doors tight behind him. Riker was sitting up now, his massive frame filling half the space. His golden eyes locked on Jacob the second he entered. "You are troubled," Riker said. Jacob set down a basket of food. "My neighbor came by today. Asked questions about the crash." The alien scales rippled faintly, like hackles rising. "Suspicion is dangerous. If your kind learns of me, they will fear. Fear brings violence." Jacob sat on a bale of hay, rubbing his face. "Yeah, and they'd probably bring the army too. Tanks, guns, whatever they've got. You'd never make it out alive." Riker leaned forward. "Then we hide better. I can move deeper into forest, away from your kind." Jacob shook his head firmly. "No, the forest's too close to town. Kids hunt there, campers go wandering. Someone would see you for sure. The barn's safest." The alien studied him, eyes glowing softly. "You protect me, though danger grows for you." Jacob met his gaze. "I made my choice. Now I've got to see it through." The barn grew quiet except for the creak of the wooden beams in the wind. Finally, Riker spoke again, his voice low. "My enemies will not stop. They can track heat, energy, signals. They may already know where my ship fell." Jacob's heart clenched. "So they'll come here?" "Yes," Riker said simply. "Soon." Jacob stared at the floorboards. He had thought, maybe, just maybe, they had more time. But now it seemed time was running out fast. That night, he barely slept. Every noise outside woke him. The wind rattling the shutters, the dogs barking in the distance, the rustle of corn in the dark. His shotgun leaned against the wall beside his bed, though he knew it would be useless against whatever was coming. The next evening, as the sun dipped low, Jacob went to check the wreck site. The field where Riker had crashed was scorched and torn, the corn flattened in a wide circle. Smoke no longer rose, but the wreckage still glimmered faint blue in places. Jacob crouched near it, running his fingers along the twisted metal. He didn't understand technology, but he knew one thing. It didn't belong here. And if Tom or anyone else saw it, they'd never believe his meteor story. Jacob dragged old tarps from his shed and covered the wreck as best he could, weighing them down with rocks and scrap wood. From a distance, it might look like a pile of junk. Up close, though, it was still strange, too smooth, too sharp, too alien. As he worked, he felt eyes on him. He looked up quickly, but no one was there, only the tall rows of corn whispering in the wind. That night, back in the barn, Riker's voice was rough but steady. "They're near. I feel it." Jacob swallowed hard. How near? The alien's golden eyes narrowed. Soon. Perhaps tomorrow. Perhaps tonight. Jacob's stomach dropped. Tomorrow was bad enough. Tonight was worse. He looked around the barn, the wooden walls, the hay, the old tractor in the corner. If ships landed here, all of it could burn. He clenched his fists. "Then we get ready." Riker tilted his head. "You would stand against them?" "I'm no soldier," Jacob admitted, "but this is my farm, my home. I won't just hand it over." The alien's gaze burned brighter. "You have spirit, farmer. Spirit like warrior." Jacob shook his head. Don't mistake stubbornness for bravery. But deep down, he knew he meant it. He would defend his land, his barn, and even the wounded alien inside. He didn't know how, but he wouldn't back down. The night stretched on, heavy and silent. Jacob sat awake in his kitchen, lantern glowing on the table, shotgun across his lap. Outside, the field swayed gently under the moonlight, and above, in the endless dark sky, faint lights moved again. Not stars, not planes, ships. They were coming. The night was thick and heavy on Jacob Miller's farm. A pale moon hung over the fields, lighting rows of corn like silver waves. The air was still, too still, as if the land itself was holding its breath. Jacob sat on his porch with his shotgun across his lap. He had not slept a wink. Every sound sharpened his nerves. The chirp of crickets, the rustle of leaves, the creak of the wooden boards beneath his chair. His eyes never left the sky. And then it happened. 3 points of light appeared above the horizon. They glowed brighter, moving in perfect formation. Slowly they grew larger, until Jacob saw shapes, sleek and dark, cutting through the clouds like blades. No engines roared, no wings cut the air. They moved silently, almost like shadows. Jacob's heart pounded. He stood, gripping his shotgun tight. "They're here," he whispered. The ships descended without warning, settling in a field where the wreckage lay hidden. Dust and dirt swirled into the air. Corn flattened beneath invisible pressure. Jacob shielded his eyes as the glow of strange lights lit up the night. The first ship's hull split open with a hiss, and figures stepped out. They were tall, armored, and armed with weapons Jacob couldn't even name. Their eyes glowed faint red through their helmets. Scales showed between the plates of armor. They were like Riker, but leaner, sharper, more menacing. Jacob's breath caught. Soldiers. Alien soldiers. They spread across the field in silence, scanning the ground with strange devices. One pointed toward the barn. Another gave a sharp hand signal, and two began walking in that direction. Jacob's blood ran cold. He rushed inside, slamming the door. His boots thudded across the wooden floor as he grabbed his lantern and ran to the barn. He pushed the doors open, light spilling inside. Riker was already awake, golden eyes burning. "I feel them," he growled, his voice low and tense. "They're here," Jacob said quickly. "They've landed in the field. They're heading this way." Riker's wings twitched, his claws flexing. He tried to rise but faltered, his wounds not yet fully healed. He dropped back onto the straw, teeth bared. "I cannot fight them yet." Jacob's stomach knotted. He wanted to run, to hide, but he knew there was no escape. They would search the farm, every corner, every shadow. If they found Riker, it would be the end, for both of them. Jacob grabbed a tarp and threw it over the alien, piling hay and sacks of grain on top. "Stay still," he whispered. "Don't make a sound." Riker's eyes narrowed. "If they find me, you will die." "Then let's make sure they don't," Jacob snapped. He yanked the barn doors shut and stepped outside just as two of the alien soldiers appeared at the edge of the yard. Their armor gleamed under the moonlight, and strange symbols glowed faintly across their chests. Each carried a long, spear-like weapon that hummed with energy. Jacob forced himself to stay calm. He leaned his shotgun against his shoulder and walked forward like any farmer dealing with trespassers. "Evening," he called, his voice steady though his heart hammered in his chest. "You boys lost." The two soldiers stopped. One tilted its head, the red glow of its eyes sweeping over Jacob. Then a harsh, metallic voice came through a translator strapped to its armor. "Human, you will answer." Jacob swallowed hard. "Answer what?" The soldier stepped closer, towering over him. "Something fell here. You saw." "Tell us where." Jacob tightened his grip on the shotgun, though it felt like a child's toy compared to their weapons. He forced a shrug. "I saw a flash in the sky. Sure. Thought it was a meteor. If it landed, it wasn't on my land." The soldier's red eyes flared brighter. "Lies!" Jacob's chest went tight. "You calling me a liar on my own farm?" He lifted the shotgun slightly. Not enough to aim, just enough to remind him he wasn't helpless. The other soldier hissed in its own tongue, sharp and guttural. Then it raised its device, scanning the ground. The light flickered toward the barn. Jacob's blood turned to ice. The soldier started walking that way. Jacob moved quickly, stepping in front. "That's my barn. Chickens, cows, and a whole lot of hay. You planning to trample my livelihood?" The soldier growled, raising its weapon slightly. Jacob stared back, unflinching. He didn't know why, but his anger boiled hotter than his fear. This was his land, his family's land. No alien had the right to walk it without respect. For a long moment, no one moved. Then the first soldier barked a command. The second lowered its weapon, though its red eyes still glowed with suspicion. The leader leaned close, its breath hot and metallic. "If you lie, human, you die." Jacob forced a smirk, though sweat dripped down his neck. "Then I guess I'll have to tell the truth." The soldiers turned and walked back toward the field, weapons humming softly. Jacob stood frozen until they vanished into the dark. Only then did he let out a shaky breath and wipe his forehead with his sleeve. He hurried back to the barn, pushing the doors open. Riker shoved the tarp off himself, eyes burning bright. They suspected. "Yeah," Jacob said, his voice tight. "But I bought us time. Not much, though. They'll be back." Riker's claws dug into the straw. "They will not stop. They will search again with more soldiers. Then blood will spill." Jacob met his gaze. "Then you'd better heal fast. Because next time, talking won't be enough." The barn grew quiet, the weight of the truth pressing down on them both. Outside, the alien ship hummed softly in the night, lights glowing like watchful eyes across the fields. The hunt had only just begun. The next day dawned gray and heavy, as if the sky itself sensed what was coming. Clouds hung low, pressing down on the farm. The air was thick with the smell of smoke from last night's fires, though none had burned on Jacob's land. Jacob stood at the edge of his porch, eyes fixed on the field where the alien ships rested. They hadn't left. Instead, more had arrived. At least 5 now sat like giant black beetles in the cornfield. Soldiers moved around them in steady lines, their red eyes glowing, their weapons ready. The farm no longer belonged to Jacob. It was an occupied zone. He gripped his shotgun tight. "They'll be back," he muttered. Inside the barn, Riker stirred. His golden eyes were brighter today, his breathing stronger. The alien dragon soldier was healing fast. His scales gleamed again, though scars still cut across his chest and wing. When Jacob stepped inside, Riker raised his head. "They gather their pack," he growled. "They're not just gathering," Jacob said grimly. "They're preparing for a search. Next time, they won't ask questions. They'll tear this farm apart until they find you." Riker's claws dug into the straw. "Then blood must spill." Jacob froze. "You think you're ready to fight them?" The alien's wings twitched. "Not fully, but enough to kill." His voice was low, dangerous. "If they find me, I will not fall quietly. And you, farmer, you must choose. Hide and wait for death or stand and fight beside me. Jacob's jaw tightened. He looked around his barn. Tools, ropes, fuel cans, piles of old equipment. He thought of his father, who had built this farm from nothing. He thought of the land, every acre worked by his family's hands. And he thought of the soldiers outside, marching across it like it already belonged to them. I won't hide, Jacob said at last. If this is my land, then I'll fight for it. With you. Riker's golden eyes glowed brighter. Then together we stand. That night, the soldiers came. Dozens of them marched up the dirt road, their red eyes lighting the dark like embers. Their ships glowed behind them, casting an eerie light across the fields. Jacob saw them first from the porch. He swallowed hard, his hands slick with sweat. His shotgun felt too light, too small. They're coming, he called into the barn. Riker stepped out into the night. His massive body filled the doorway, wings stretching wide. Though his wounds still ached, the sight of him was terrifying. Scales glistening in the moonlight, claws sharp as blades. Jacob almost felt sorry for the soldiers. Almost. The lead alien raised a hand, and the soldiers fanned out, surrounding the barn. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. The leader's voice cracked through the translator. Human, you lied to us. The fugitive is here. Step aside and you may live. Jacob's throat was dry, but his voice was steady. This is my land. You don't give orders here. The soldier hissed, raising his weapon. Then you die with him. The air exploded into chaos. Riker roared, a sound that shook the bar and the ground beneath it. His wings snapped wide, knocking two soldiers off their feet. He lunged forward, claws slashing, tail whipping like a battering ram. Energy blasts lit up the night. Beams scorched the barn's walls, cutting through like butter. One shot hit Riker's shoulder, searing scales, but the alien dragon did not falter. He grabbed a soldier in his claws and hurled him across the yard like a rag doll. Jacob fired his shotgun. The blast echoed loud in the night, dropping one soldier who had rushed too close. He reloaded fast, sweat stinging his eyes. Another came at him with a spear-like weapon, but Jacob swung his shotgun like a club, knocking the alien back. Stay down, farmer, Riker shouted, flames flickering at the edges of his mouth. Their weapons burned through flesh. But Jacob refused. He darted between the barn and the porch, using cover, firing when he could. He knew his land better than they did. He knew where to hide, where to strike. Riker fought like a storm. Every movement was raw power, claws tearing armor, tail smashing weapons, wings sending enemies flying. But there were too many. For every soldier he crushed, two more stepped forward. A blast hit Jacob's porch, shattering wood into splinters. He dove behind the water trough, barely breathing. His shotgun was hot in his hands. Jacob! Riker roared, knocking aside three soldiers. More come. We cannot hold forever. The farmer's chest heaved. He looked at the alien, fighting with everything he had, blood mixing with fire in his throat. And in that moment, Jacob knew they weren't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for each other. He loaded his last shells. Then we make it count. The soldiers regrouped, surrounding them tighter. Weapons glowed, humming louder. The leader stepped forward again, armor scorched but unbroken. You cannot win, it said coldly. Surrender, or burn. Riker bared his teeth. We will never kneel. Jacob stood beside him, shotgun aimed, eyes blazing with defiance. This is my land, he said again, and I don't take kindly to trespassers. The leader raised his weapon. The soldiers followed. The night froze in silence, then exploded with fire, steel, and fury. The farm burned with light and fire. Alien weapons cut through the night, like lightning, beams slicing the barn to rubble. Smoke filled the air, and the ground shook under the clash of claws, steel, and explosions. Jacob Miller fought with every breath he had left. His shotgun roared again and again, each blast throwing sparks from alien armor. He ducked behind the trough, sprinted to the wagon, and fired from the shadows. He was only one man, but it was his land, and he knew every inch of it. Beside him, Riker was a living storm. The alien dragon soldier tore through enemies, golden eyes blazing, wings beating with thunder. His roar shook the soldiers' hearts, though their machines did not falter. His scales were scorched, his body bleeding, but still he fought. Yet the tide pressed harder. For every alien that fell, more stepped forward. Red eyes glowed in the smoke, closing in from all sides. The leader raised its spear-like weapon, pointing at Jacob. "Human," it hissed, voice cracking through its translator. "Your courage is waste. When you fall, the fugitive falls with you." Jacob's arms trembled with exhaustion. His shotgun was nearly empty. He knew he couldn't hold forever. But he lifted the weapon again, eyes burning with the same stubborn fire his father once carried. "This is my home," Jacob said, his voice raw. "If I fall standing." The leader aimed a fire, and then Riker struck. With a roar that split the night, he leapt into the line of fire. The blast seared across his chest, but he didn't slow. His claws ripped through the leader's armor, tearing the weapon free. Flames poured from his mouth, engulfing the soldier in a blaze that lit the field like sunrise. The others faltered. For a heartbeat, the swarm of soldiers froze. Riker turned, his body shaking, his chest burned deep. His eyes found Jacob. "Now, farmer," he thundered, "end this." Jacob looked at the chaos around him. The broken barn, the burning fields, the soldiers readying to strike again. His shotgun was empty, but in the wreckage of his father's old shed, he saw it. A fuel tank half buried under hay and wood. His mind raced. If he hit it, he sprinted, heart pounding, legs heavy as stone. Energy beams cut the air around him, sparks exploding from the dirt. He reached the tank, grabbed a rusted lantern hanging nearby, and smashed it against the metal. Flames licked at the leaking fuel. "Riker," Jacob shouted, "get down!" The alien soldier's eyes widened with understanding. He wrapped his wings around himself and dropped. The fire roared, raced across the ground, and then, boom! The explosion ripped through the night. Fire swallowed the field, blasting soldiers off their feet. Metal screamed, armor cracked, and ships rocked on their landing gear. The ground shook as if the earth itself was rejecting the invaders. When the smoke cleared, silence fell. Half the soldiers lay broken in the dirt. The rest pulled back, dragging their wounded. Their leader was gone, nothing left but scorched armor. Slowly, the survivors retreated toward their ships, their red eyes dim with fear. Jacob staggered to his knees, coughing from the smoke. His chest ached, his ears rang, but he was alive. He looked toward the barn, or what was left of it. Riker rose from the rubble, wings torn, body battered, but still standing. His golden eyes burned with pride. "You fought," Riker said, his deep voice echoing like thunder. "Not as prey, not as servant, as warrior." Jacob gave a weak laugh, leaning on his shotgun. "Never thought I'd be called that, just a farmer." Riker stepped closer, lowering his massive head. "A farmer who stood against a legion. Alone, you should have died. But together, we turned the tide." The ships lifted off, engines glowing, and vanished into clouds. For now, the land was quiet again. But Jacob knew this was not the end. "They'll be back," Jacob muttered. "Yes," Riker said. "They will not forget this night. But nor will I forget the human who chose to fight." The dragon soldier looked at the ruined farm, the broken fields, and then back at Jacob. "You saved me when I was nothing but a wounded beast. You stood when others would run. My people will know this. Your courage will not be forgotten." Jacob shook his head. "I didn't do it for honor. I did it because it was right. Because no one, man or alien, gets to trample my home." For the first time, Riker's fierce face softened. "Then you are more dangerous than any warrior I have known. You fight not for glory, but for heart. That is the strength your kind carries." The night wind swept across the smoking fields. The stars shone down, silent witnesses to the battle. Jacob tightened his grip on the shotgun, even as exhaustion pulled at him. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring. More soldiers, maybe worse. His land was scarred, his farm nearly ruined. But deep inside, a fire burned. He had stood against creatures not of this world. He had survived, and he was not alone. Riker spread his torn wings, lifting his head high. Then let them come again. This time, I will stand ready. And when they ask why one human farmer could defy them, I will tell them, because a farmer's land is worth more than an empire's pride. Jacob smiled faintly, wiping soot from his face. Guess we'll just have to teach them what it means to mess with Earth. Together, man and alien stood in the ruins of the farm, side by side, firelight painting their figures against the night. The battle was over, but a bond had been forged. A farmer and a dragon soldier, unlikely allies, bound by defiance, ready for whatever came next. The sky was quiet again, but the story of Jacob Miller's stand was only beginning.